Alan Evans stood at a mere 5 feet 5 inches and weighed 125 pounds, but he made up for his slight frame with an overly aggressive demeanor. Since his father's tragic death when he was 10, there had been no man in his life to temper his rough edges. He and his mother, Gertrude, lived comfortably but modestly in an ethnic enclave of a Midwestern city, thanks to wisely invested insurance money. Now, at 17 and freshly graduated from high school, Alan was grappling with his future, whether to pursue college or enter the workforce. In truth, he preferred the status quo, caring for his mother and handling the household chores. Lost in these thoughts and a convenient computer game, he barely noticed when his mom called out. "Alan, come down for a moment," she said. When he appeared, she explained that she had volunteered to watch the Stewart children for a few hours while Mrs. Stewart went shopping. "I can't imagine how hard it must be to manage groceries and 2 kids on the city bus," she remarked. "You don't have to help much, but please be kinder to little Billy." Her eyes sharpened, a look he had learned to fear as a child. "If you dress him in his sister's clothes again, you will face my wrath." "But, Mom, he wet his pants, and Mrs. Stewart sent clean clothes for Bethy," Alan protested. "Besides, he's such a sissy, playing with Bethy's paper dolls and stuff." Just after 3:30, Maggie Stewart arrived, bringing her 5-year-old daughter Bethy and 4-year-old son Billy. She expressed her gratitude profusely and offered to pay Gertrude for her help. "Nonsense," Gertrude replied, "what are neighbors for if not to help each other?" She added that their surprise party would be well underway by the time Maggie returned at 5. "Alan, could you please get the children settled in the den with a movie?" Gertrude asked. "I need to prepare a few things for Aunt May, she'll be here soon." "I can't stand that little sissy mom, so hurry up," Alan shot back. "Alan!" Gertrude's voice sliced through the air, commanding immediate obedience. She retreated to her bedroom alcove to gather supplies for her sister, May, who was the principal of a nearby parochial school and had a reputation for being strict with male teachers. Alan knew she would arrive shortly, as she always left promptly at 3:40 on Fridays. He ushered the children into the den, setting up a small card table and chairs in front of the sofa before turning on the TV and VCR. When the movie began, Billy piped up, "Cinderella is a girls' movie." "Why do you always pick girls' movies for us?" "Because you're such a sissy boy, I thought you'd like it," Alan taunted. "Now be quiet, or I'll put your sister's dress on you again." Billy began to whine and then cry, the humiliation of last week's incident still fresh. "All right, you little brat, if you're going to cry like a girl, then you'll be one," Alan gloated, retrieving Bethy's spare dress. He pulled it over Billy's head, buttoned it up, and sneered, "Now, if you don't stop crying like a baby, I might just find a diaper for you." The sound of Billy and Bethy's increasing cries filled the room, prompting Gertrude, who had been eavesdropping nearby, to burst into the den. She quickly took the children to the living room, comforting them until their tears subsided. "I have a little surprise that I'm sure will cheer you both up," she said just as May knocked at the door. "Do come in, May, you're just in time," Gertrude called as she returned to the den. "Well, Alan, you just couldn't resist humiliating that child again, even after I warned you there would be consequences if it ever happened again," she bristled as she revealed the hairbrush she had held behind her back. She whacked it firmly across his backside. "Get out in the living room and drop your pants, young man. You are not too big to get the spanking you have so richly earned," she said as she glared at him with the totally frozen look that he knew meant trouble. He went to the living room, but left his pants up. He was not getting a bare-butt spanking in front of his aunt and the kids. Gertrude came out right behind him expecting this. "Drop 'em now or I will," she stated. When he still stood there, she came up, grabbed the waistband and popped off the button, unzipped them roughly, and pulled them and his shorts down to his knees. She grabbed the back of his neck and led him to her chair. Pulling him down across her lap, she administered several sharp blows to his bare butt. He tried to hold back and show he was tough, but by the 12th whack he was sobbing like Billy had done before. "See the little girl crying, Billy, would you like to give him a whack?" "And you too, Bethy," she encouraged. The 2 children came over and took the hairbrush in turn and giggled as they each gave him the best spanking they could. His backside was already so sore from his mother's application that it seriously hurt as they hit him. That and the total humiliation of it all made him cry all the more. Finally, his mother let him up and told him to strip right there in the living room. He hesitated. "Mom, this is so humiliating already. I'm not going to stand unclothed in front of everyone," he wailed. "You have no idea yet what humiliation is, young lady, but you are about to find out," Gert glared. Not wanting the spanking to resume, he undressed, just as May, on cue, emerged from Gert's bedroom with some shopping bags. "Put these on, you whiny little bitch," she said, holding out a pair of soft pink panties with lace around the waist, leg holes, and across the seat. "I won't," he whined. Whack! Out of nowhere, May smacked his butt with the wide leather strap. He almost collapsed to the floor with the pain of that. He had never hurt so much in his life. He took the panties from his aunt and slowly pulled the satin up his legs and around his waist. At least he wasn't unclothed anymore. "Who's the sissy now?" Lil Billy chided, having changed clothes in the meantime. May put the pink and lace garter belt around his waist, fastening it. She said, "Put your arms out so I can help you with your bra. You'll learn how to wear it, but we'll need some help at first," she goaded. She then produced 2 breast forms and inserted them in the bra. While she had been doing that, Gertrude had gone into her room and gotten the dress and petticoat. May had him raise his arms again as she slid the pink and lace camisole over his head and arranged it. "Now sit on the chair so I can help you with your stockings. We don't want to run them," she purred, obviously enjoying what she was doing. She slid the white stockings up his legs and fastened them to the garters and put the pink skimmers on his feet. So far the sisters had guessed right, as everything fit well. May took the crinoline, and having Alan step into it, pulled it up around his waist and drew it tight so it wouldn't slide down on his narrow hips. Alan started to whimper again when he saw the dress. It was all pink satin with a yoke collar, and had a 3-inch row of lace on the hem and the puffy sleeves and a 4-row outlining the collar. "Mom, you can't possibly expect me to wear that thing? You can stop this now. I've learned my lesson. I promise not to pick on Billy ever again," he whined. "Well, your cousin Zoe thought it was too frilly for her taste, but she's not the sissy you are, or we'll become little girls," stated May in a matter-of-fact manner. The tone of her voice and the look in his mother's eyes convinced him not to resist as they raised his arms and slid the dress down over the petticoats, zipping the back up so it was firmly in place and he couldn't get it off without help. "Now turn around slowly so we can all see how pretty you look in your new dress, sweetie," his mother said as she sat on the sofa next to Billy. "He looks just like a little girl, like my sister when she's dressed up," Billy exclaimed jovially. Obviously, he felt much better that this was happening to someone else, especially to his tormentor. Gert hadn't realized the passing of time until she heard the knock on the door. She practically bounced over and let Mrs. Stewart in. Producing a dishwater blonde wig from one of her bags, she said, "Here is my contribution to improving the neighborhood." "Is everyone in on this evil joke?" he asked in a voice that seemed to get somewhat higher in the last hour. "How long are you going to keep this up? You know I don't deserve this," he whined. "All I did was point out that a boy who plays with dolls and ends up in his sister's dress because he wet himself might be a sissy," he fished. "It goes a lot deeper and has gone on a lot longer than that, young lady," his mother replied. "Quit calling me that. I'm not a girl. I won't be a girl. I am a man," he exclaimed with his eyes tearing up again as he looked at himself encased in the pink satin. "You are a girl, and you will be a girl until I decide otherwise. You've never been a man, just a seriously immature big boy whose attitude and sensibilities haven't grown with his body," she replied. "Let me explain how we arrived at this point and what I have planned for you," she said. "Now smooth your skirt as you sit so no one can see your panties, and I'll begin." He smoothed the back of the skirt, mimicking what he had seen his mom, aunt, and cousins do countless times before. As he sat down, he tried to push down the petticoat, which held the skirt almost straight out. "Now, Lily, that's what you will be called, and you had better respond to it," Gertrude started. "Ever since your father passed away, you've become increasingly bratty and a bully. Over the years, you've brought your cousins to tears more times than I can count, and you've done the same to many girls at school and younger children. I always hoped you would outgrow this behavior and develop some compassion for others, especially girls, but you haven't. Now that you're on the brink of adulthood, the situation calls for a crash course in emotional growth. You will be dressed in female clothing day and night, wherever you go. You'll learn to take care of your wig and appearance until your hair is long enough to style appropriately. For the month, you'll attend summer finishing classes at the Girls' Academy. You will be the epitome of politeness to your aunt, cousins, children, and me. Any violations or backtalk will only add to your punishment. And remember what you told Billy, if you act like a baby about this, there are still diapers in the house. Your cousins will arrive shortly with your additional supplies and will teach you the basics to ensure you don't embarrass yourself when we go out for dinner tonight. They'll be staying over the weekend to help you catch up so you aren't too far behind for your month at the finishing school, she concluded. Can't I just stay home if I have to wear this outfit? The whole neighborhood goes to Murphy's for Friday dinner, and I'm bound to see someone I know, he cried again. No, you can't stay here. The idea is for everyone to see just how much of a sissy you really are beneath that tough exterior, which will be softening for you, May replied. Now stand up so we can take some cute pictures, and put your feet together so you don't look too out of place. She and Mrs. Stewart both pulled cameras from their purses and began snapping pictures from various angles. He was born to wear that dress. Mrs. Stewart exclaimed cheerfully as she circled him, her camera clicking away. And she looks so pretty, I can't believe how feminine she already appears. Once the fuzz is gone from her face and chest, she could be almost beautiful with the right makeup skills, she added with a chuckle. I'd be happy to teach her those skills if you send her my way, Mrs. Evans, she continued. With the photos taken and her part in the humiliation complete, Mrs. Stewart gathered her packages and the two little ones to head home for dinner. Say goodbye to the nice lady, she encouraged, looking straight at Lily. Lily will help you walk them over, your arms are completely full, Mrs. Evans added. In this? Lily whimpered in protest. Another week, young lady. Care to add more? Her mother shot back. Tears welling in his eyes, Lily took each child by the hand and led them to the door. Maneuvering through the doorway with the full skirt was a challenge, but he managed. As he stepped outside, a couple of young boys passing by noticed him. Look! A boy in a dress, they laughed as they walked away. Fortunately, the Stewarts lived next door, so he didn't have far to go, and only a couple of neighbors saw him before he returned. As he walked back into the house, careful not to catch the skirt on the door latch, he heard laughter. Zoe and Tracy had arrived while he was gone, and they were clearly enjoying his predicament. They exchanged giggles, saying, "This is going to be so much fun." This was their chance to get back at Alan for years of teasing and torment. They had dreaded Friday dinners, but now this was going to be much more entertaining. Go upstairs with the girls so they can get you ready for dinner, Lily, Gertrude instructed. His first hour in a dress had been a nightmare, and Alan, now Lily, knew that with these two in charge, things were only going to get worse. As he made his way up the narrow staircase in his wide dress, he could only imagine how bad it would become. The girls eagerly grabbed several bags and a yardstick, following him up the stairs. I expect no trouble up there, his mother called after them. They directed him into his bedroom first, where Zoe, the eldest, began to undress him while Tracy danced into the bathroom, unloading her bags onto the counter. With some resistance, Zoe managed to strip him of his dress and petticoat in just a few minutes, leaving him in only a bra and revealing panties. He tried in vain to cover himself as she pushed him down the hall and into the bathroom. Now strip, or you'll get the yardstick on that already glowing backside, Tracy warned, noticing the redness beginning to bruise on his thighs. Reluctantly, he removed his panties as Zoe unclipped his bra from behind. The bath was already filled with lavender-scented bubbles that Tracy had prepared. The two girls shared a bottle of hair remover, applying it all over his body, including his privates. They made him stand for a few minutes to let the cream work, teasing, "You're going to make such a pretty girl." Once they helped him into the bath, Zoe disappeared while Tracy spread lavender oil over him and assisted with rinsing. Finally, he was allowed out of the tub, but as he looked down at his completely hairless body, he began to sob again. Tracy produced medical glue and affixed breast forms to his bare chest. He noticed how heavy they felt now that they were glued on, but he remained still as she applied foundation to blend the seams into his skin tone. Stepping back to admire her work, Tracy pointed at his shriveled member. "We'll have to do something about that," she remarked before leading him back to the bedroom, where Zoe had laid out clothes on the bed. Zoe had also emptied his closet and dresser into several boxes. Tracy went downstairs to fetch the rest of their packages, mostly clothes they didn't want or had decided to donate to this effort. She returned and placed them on the desk as Zoe began dressing him again for dinner. First, she pulled on white panties with a lace applique across the front, then a white open-bottom girdle. He stood still as she slipped on the stockings and fastened them to the girdle. Next, she put on the matching bra, adjusting the straps to provide a little lift. Stepping back to admire him, she commanded, "Tuck that thing between your legs, a young lady can't have a bulge in her skirts, can she?" He complied, noticing how uncomfortable it felt at first as the elastic of the panties held everything tightly back between his legs. Zoe then helped him into the slip, which was white and adorned with lace along the bodice and hem. She picked up a white blouse featuring a high lace collar and cuffs, but as he began to put it on, he realized the slip and straps were clearly visible beneath it. Next came the skirt, a mauve and white plaid gabardine with tiny threads of bright pink woven through. The waist had a double button design to prevent it from coming undone as Zoe pulled it snugly around his waist and zipped it up in the back. The tightness of the waistband over the girdle gave at least the illusion of hips, causing the light fabric of the skirt to flare out slightly. The final touch was a pair of mauve pumps with 3-inch heels that accentuated his already slim calves. As Zoe guided him to the mirror, he saw himself and recognized that, aside from the lack of hair, he looked just like a girl. Tears welled in his eyes once more. "You need to stop that whining, young lady, or you'll ruin your makeup before the evening even begins," she scolded. Taking him back into the bathroom, they got to work on his makeup. They applied foundation, a touch of pink rouge, light mauve eyeshadow, mascara, and pink lipstick until he met their approval. Each step of the process added to his humiliation. Finally, Tracy placed a wig on him and pinned it securely in place. The color matched his natural hair perfectly, falling just to his shoulders in a soft flip. She brushed the bangs down to his eyebrows, stepping back to let him see his reflection in the mirror. "There, you're almost as pretty as we are. I think you were made to be a girl. With those high cheekbones and delicate chin and nose, no one would ever guess you used to be a boy," she chortled. As he stared at their handiwork in the mirror, he realized that even he would mistake himself for a girl, and it was him. "Now remember to take smaller steps and keep your feet straight in front of you, or you'll trip in those shoes and give us another laugh," Zoe instructed as they headed for the stairs to show the women their creation. When he entered the living room, Gertrude did a double take. That picture of soft femininity couldn't possibly be her son. Observing the way the girls had taught him to walk and the posture demanded by the tight bra straps, she felt confident she had made the right decision. The idea had formed about a month earlier after Alan had embarrassed everyone with his comments and attitude, prompting Mr. Murphy to suggest they hurry their dinner so other patrons could enjoy their meals in peace. After returning home, while the cousins went out to the school dance, May and Gertrude began their plot to transform Alan into a better person. While May arranged for paperwork to change his name for school and work, Gertrude visited the doctor to obtain hormone replacement capsules, feigning menopausal symptoms that hadn't existed since her hysterectomy shortly after Alan was born. Having read in transgender ads online that it took 4 to 6 weeks to see results, she had started adding the capsules to his food over the last month. After increasing the dosage to 3 capsules a day, she noticed his skin becoming softer and that he no longer left the bathroom a mess from shaving nearly as often. She could hardly wait to see if he developed the same substantial and firm breasts that her cousins displayed. That would be the turning point. Once he had to wear a bra, there would be no turning back. After his mother's quick decree of another week in dresses, Alan decided it was time to rethink his situation. Clearly, resisting and complaining wouldn't get him anywhere with his mother in this mood and with his aunt and cousins around. He would have to navigate this for a few days until his mother relented. He just hoped none of his friends would see him like this. They already thought he was a bit of a sissy because of his slender frame and lack of facial hair. Being seen in a dress would solidify their taunts into an undeniable truth. As he pondered his situation, his mom announced they would drive to Murphy's, even though it was only 3 blocks away and a beautiful June evening. They had standing reservations for 6:30, and it was nearly that time. The 5 of them headed out, and Gertrude pulled the car out of the garage. Aunt May took the front seat, Tracy hopped into the left side, while Zoe held the door for him to get in the middle on the right. He stepped into the back with a long stride. Whack! The hairbrush hit his backside again, and he yelped in pain. "That's not how a lady gets into a car," she instructed, quickly. "First, you sit and remember to smooth your skirt, then swing your legs over, and finally slide in. Unless, of course, you enjoy showing the world those lovely white panties of yours," she added with a smirk. She'll get what's coming to her, he thought, doing his best to follow her instructions. They arrived at the restaurant just a couple of minutes later, and Zoe reminded him to reverse the process when getting out, or she still had the hairbrush ready. As they approached the door, it swung open, and Mr. Murphy half appeared, holding the door. "Evening, ladies," he greeted, following them into the lobby. "Where's Alan tonight?" "Lily will be dining with us," Zoe said, pointing to the beautiful young girl who had caught his eye upon entering. Upon closer inspection, Mr. Murphy's jaw dropped slightly as he regained his composure. Having a flashback to his own months spent in petticoats, he remarked, "I trust she'll behave much better than your son did," and winked at Lily. Instantly, Lily turned beet red at being recognized so quickly and feared that all the other families who regularly dined there on Friday nights would realize it was him in drag. "If you had walked like I showed you earlier, he wouldn't have had a clue," she whispered to him, adding, "I saw the way he leered at you when you came in. Now walk correctly, and no one else will figure it out. You're such a pretty girl." He did his best to follow her advice, managing to attract no more attention than any other young girl would, except for young Stephen McMurtry, who whispered to his brother, "Did you see that, babe? I'd like to get into her bloomers." Lily focused on not standing out, minding her manners and eating as daintily as she could. By mimicking her cousins, she managed to get through the meal without drawing any undue attention. Just as they were finishing, Mrs. McMurtry approached their table to speak with Gertrude. "I like what you've done with the lad. You must stop by for tea tomorrow and bring the pretty lassie along. My Stephen could use an eyeful of her," she said in her old country brogue. "We'd love to visit you, say around 1?" Gertrude responded. Adeline McMurtry nodded in agreement and returned to her family. "I heard you tell your brother you fancy that new lass, so I invited her over tomorrow so you can get a better look at her," she whispered to Stephen. He smiled, thinking, "I'm gonna lay that babe," and replied, "Thanks, Mom, I owe you one." As the family finished dinner, Lily finally understood why they had brought the car. Aunt May lived only 4 blocks in the opposite direction from Murphy's, so she and the girls were planning to walk home and enjoy the pleasant evening, while Gertrude needed to take Lily to the shopping plaza to get her essentials. Zoe caught Mr. Murphy and that brat Stevie leering at Lily as the families exited. She noticed Lily imitating Tracy's walk, while Tracy wiggled a bit to impress one of the boys across the room. Coming up behind Lily, she whispered in her ear, "Quit flirting, or you'll end up with one of those boys hosing you up your skirt, you little slut." Her stage whisper made both her aunt and mom giggle, and a couple at the table they passed stared in astonishment. Confused, Lily hurried to get out of view of the patrons, and once outside, turned to Zoe. "What was that for?" she asked. "Tracy was walking like that to let that boy in the corner know her skirts could be lifted, and you, being the klutz that you are, were broadcasting it to the whole room. You need finishing school, young lady, before you spend your life as a whore." Zoe replied in her best mother voice. "But don't fret, we usually get 12 to 15 other boys who want to be girls for the classes every summer," she added. The 2 sisters said their goodbyes, promising to get together the next afternoon to share what happened at the McMurtrys. Gertrude and Lily got into the car, with Lily making sure to sit properly, and then they headed to the plaza. During the 20-minute ride, Gertrude elaborated on the plot to Lily, much to her dismay. Gertrude had found a shop with a young assistant manager who was more than willing to help her build a suitable wardrobe for her daughter. She had even agreed to keep the store open later than 9 if it took that long to ensure Lily was properly outfitted. Oh my God, thought Alan, if she's going to spend that kind of money, she's serious about this month, or now, 6 weeks, and he resolved to do nothing further to extend his punishment. As they entered the shop, a pretty little redhead bounced over from behind the counter. I'm glad you could make it this evening. There are only a few girls in the store right now, so you should be able to shop pretty much undisturbed, she said. Oh, by the way, I'm Fiona, and you must be Lily. You're already so pretty, you're going to be the most beautiful girl when I'm done with you, she added, taking Lily by the hand and leading her toward the foundation section of the store. Fiona had won Gertrude's confidence the week before when she had been searching for a shop. Gertrude had gingerly explained her intentions to several clerks at different stores. Most were put off by the idea, while a few reluctantly agreed to let her bring her son by, but this girl had enthusiastically welcomed the idea. She had assured Gertrude that she would personally take care of Alan just as she had for her brother, Victor, when it was his time to learn the facts. She was pleased to learn that Victoria had attended junior high at her sister's school and that she indeed knew Alan, as they both went to the same high school, where Alan had made more than one pass at her over the past couple of years. In the lingerie section, Lily felt embarrassed by the delicate, feminine garments hanging on the walls. Fiona selected the laciest pair of panties in the store, a delicate champagne-colored set with lace inlays along the sides and across the waist of the opaque satin. She chose a size 5, along with a matching 34C bra and camisole, considering the volume of the forms glued to his body by his cousins. Try these on, and let me check the size, she smiled, leading him to an empty changing stall. She practically pushed him inside, leaving Lily to wonder how his mother had managed to find a sales clerk who not only knew him but whose sister he had danced with at school dances. I'll tell you how they fit, but I'm not going to put them on display for you, he said as she drew the curtain behind him. That'll cost another month, he heard from the front of the store. Want to go for the summer, young lady? He started to softly sob as he removed his clothes and hung them on the many hooks on the back wall. With 3 mirrors in the room, he watched himself as he drew the fine fabric up his hairless legs. He had to admit the feeling of the material against his skin was nice. Next, he fumbled to hook the bra. Finally fastening it around his stomach, he turned it to get the seemingly permanently attached breast forms in place and slid the straps over his shoulders. The reflection in the mirror did indeed look girlish to him. As he was putting the camisole over his head, the curtain opened, and Fiona reached in, pulling him out of the changing room and into the store. The outline of his penis was clearly visible through the panties, and the 3 girls shopping in the lingerie department immediately noticed him. They erupted into giggles as they recognized him from school. I always thought he was a fairy, one said. Now that I see where he shops, I'm sure of it. Wait until the rest of the girls hear about this, she laughed as the trio walked away, glancing back at Alan in his girls' underwear. Fiona ignored the commotion and began checking the fit of the bra and the coverage of the cups. Then she danced in front of him, pointing. We'll have to fix that, she said, indicating his crotch. She went to a set of drawers on the other wall and retrieved an unusual-looking pair of panties. This is a gaffe. Until you decide to get that ugly thing removed, this will at least keep you from embarrassing yourself further. Lily, overwhelmed with shame at being exposed by the girls, was led back into the dressing room by Fiona, sobbing uncontrollably. Without comment, Fiona pulled off the panties and helped him guide his legs through the proper openings in the gaff. She then maneuvered his testicles up into the garment. As he doubled over in pain, she finished pulling the gaff up and tucked his penis snugly between his legs before placing the panties back on him. The discomfort left him feeling defeated, and he meekly followed her back out into the store. It isn't proper, but it'll have to do for now, she glared at him. This is payback for all the times you tripped me at school, pulled my skirts up, or made me drop my books. I always knew I'd get my revenge someday, you little creep. I'm so happy your mother picked my shop for this. I always felt you'd end up in something like this, she spat. With Lily in tow, she went back to the corsets, picking 3 from a rack and wrapping them around his torso. She chose one to put around his waist, which came just below his bra and over his hips. Hooking the front eyelets, she then moved to the back, pushing on his butt with her knee to draw the laces as tightly as she could. She tied them in a bow and stepped back. The corset narrowed his waist by a good 4 inches, giving him a genuine hourglass shape. "This is a size 26, but I'll send a 24 and a 22 along with you. Each month you'll need to move to a smaller size to achieve the shape you've always wanted," she said. She took him back to the dressing room so he could see his reflection while she went off to find dresses. Looking at all 3 angles, he could only see a girl with a small waist and a flat front. He started putting on stockings and hooking them to the garters on the corset as he awaited the next round. Fiona returned with several dresses, holding them up to her chin, and told him to pick the one he liked best. When he said nothing, she handed him a frost-colored silk shirt dress with a fuller skirt. "You'll need to wear a slip with that," she said as he began to put it on. With the champagne half-slip-on underneath, coming just above the knees, the skirt barely covered the 6 inches of lace that adorned the hem. Looking in the mirror, he saw a girl staring back at him, an attractive one, except for the running mascara from his tears. Fiona gently fluffed the hair from the back of his wig that had gotten caught in the collar of the dress, then slipped a pair of moss-green 4-inch stilettos onto his feet. He staggered a little as she led him to show his mother her new daughter. "Congratulations! It's a girl, Mrs. Evans!" Fiona exclaimed, presenting Lily to his mother and the few patrons still in the store. Gertrude beamed. "We'll need about 6 more dresses, a couple of gowns, 4 or 5 skirt and blouse sets, several nighties, and sets of underwear," she said, drawing Lily over to sit beside her. Transformed, Lily smoothed her skirt and spread it as she sat, keeping her knees together and sitting straight in the chair. Gertrude thought it was as if defeat was stenciled on her forehead. Fiona measured Lily's foot and brought out several pairs of shoes in various heel heights that matched the outfit she had selected. Then she took Lily to the cosmetics display, holding different colors up to her cheeks in the bright light, ultimately selecting 3 shades each of foundation powder, lipstick, eyeshadow, and blush. She organized them into bags labeled day, evening, and night. After explaining the differences and how to use each, she cleaned the mess off Lily's cheeks and applied fresh makeup and eyeliner. Being a professional, Fiona made Lily look almost like a porcelain doll by the time she finished. Once she had rung up the purchases and settled the bill, leaving a generous tip for her efforts, she thanked them for their visit and added to Mrs. Evans, "Victoria will stop by around 9:30 tomorrow to help your daughter get organized." Lily had looked pale before due to the makeup, but now her face went completely white at the news. Every girl and woman in the neighborhood must be in on this plot to humiliate her. How would she ever face any of them again after she transitioned back to being a boy? Gertrude and Lily gathered the bundles and loaded them into the car. Lily couldn't help but notice how nice the silk of her dress felt against the smoothness of her stockings as the summer breeze moved her skirt around. It felt slinky against the satin of her slip and camisole, and knowing from her reflection in the store mirror that anyone who saw her now would see only a young woman out with her mother, she began to relax a bit. With the realization that this was how she would spend her summer, she figured she might as well get used to it. She just hoped she wouldn't run into anyone she knew for a while. But then there was that girl, Vicki, who was coming over in the morning. How would she react to seeing Lily? The drive home from the clothing store passed quickly, and Lily helped his mother unload the items from the back seat. They both carried full armloads of garment bags, shoeboxes, and other items into the house and up the stairs to Lily's room. While Gertrude began unwrapping the clothing and putting it away, Lily made his biggest mistake of the day. "After I'm done with this nonsense, we can save it all for little Billy to grow into," he said. Gertrude moved faster than he had ever seen as she backhanded Lily across the face. "You're dumber than I ever thought possible, or you're starting to enjoy this," she snapped. "Your cousins will be here in a few minutes to get you ready for bed, so go downstairs and open the door for them while I finish this," she added. Lily descended the stairs, rubbing his cheek. A few minutes later, Tracy and Zoe bounced in with their weekend clothes, excited about their first chance to truly enjoy staying with their Aunt Gertrude. The three of them headed upstairs, with Zoe walking behind Lily, lifting his skirt to peek at his panties while giggling. "Lily's nightclothes are laid out, so if you can help her get into them," Gertrude said. "I have a few things to do downstairs, and I expect no trouble up here." Lily followed Tracy into the room and gasped, "Oh no." Looking around, he saw a black sheer baby doll nightie paired with a matching bra and panties. It had 3-inch ruffles at the hem and on the shoulder straps, and on the bed lay a diaper with pins and baby powder on the stand next to it. Tracy's eyes lit up. "This is going to be fun," she shouted to her sister, who couldn't see around Lily, frozen in the doorway and shaking. "First, we have to get your clothes off," Tracy said as she started unbuttoning Lily's blouse. Zoe unbuttoned and unzipped the skirt from the back, lifting Lily's slip to nudge his arms out of the way and pull it over his head. In no time, he was left in just his bra, panties, and garter. Zoe unhooked the bra and garter from the back and removed the stockings. Tracy then pulled down his panties, leaving him exposed in front of his cousins. Tracy led him to the bed and nudged him to lie down, which he did, still in shock. She positioned the diaper beneath him, dusted his butt and penis with powder, and then pulled the diaper around, pinning it snugly around his hips. As she helped him stand up again, both girls burst into laughter, their sides aching from amusement. Once they calmed down, they picked up the bra and panties. Tracy slid the bra up his arms and situated the breast forms inside, then Zoe hooked it. The bra was all lace except for the satin bottom half of the cups, squeezing the forms enough to give Lily a hint of cleavage. Next, he stepped into the bloomer-style panties, which were as sheer as the nightie, except for a small cotton insert in the crotch. The diaper was clearly visible beneath them. Then Tracy lifted the gown over his head and lowered it onto him, ensuring it came perfectly to the top of the diaper. They each took him by an arm and led him to the full-length mirror to see his reflection. "We must put her hair in pigtails for the night," she said as she went to fetch a hairbrush. Lily looked in the mirror and began to cry, leaving streaks in the makeup still on his face. Zoe guided him to the bathroom, where Tracy was waiting with the brush. She sat him down and explained how to remove makeup using cream and a wet cloth while Tracy parted and styled his wig, fixing the hairpins and straightening it as she worked. Once that was done, they led him back to his room, though he struggled to walk due to the thickness of the triple diaper between his legs. As they entered the room, Gertrude appeared again. "Isn't she so pretty in that gown, girls?" she asked. "It's beautiful, any girl would be proud to wear that gown, and the diaper was such a clever touch, Aunt Gert," Zoe replied. "It'll be so fun taking care of our baby girl this weekend," Tracy added as she produced a baby bottle filled with warm milk. "It's time I put our baby girl to sleep for the night. Tomorrow is going to be so busy." With that, she took Lily by the hand and led him over to the bed, having him lie down with his head on her lap while she placed the bottle's nipple in his mouth. Lily began to suck instinctively. By the time he finished the bottle, he was starting to doze off, so his mother lifted his head from her lap and onto the pillow. The three of them headed to the door, and as Tracy reached for the light, she grabbed a diaper and a set of pins from the dresser. "She's always been the baby in our family," Zoe explained as the girls said goodnight and made their way to the guest room. Lily woke up just after 7 the next morning, which felt extremely early for him now that school was out. Not quite awake, he began making his way down the stairs in search of coffee. It wasn't until he was nearly at the bottom that he remembered he was wearing a diaper, the rubbing on his thighs a constant reminder. He entered the dining room on his way to the kitchen, and the sound of his aunt laughing finally jolted him awake enough to realize that all 4 girls were already up, sitting at the table. "Zoe, run home and grab the little pink dress that Tracy wears sometimes while Lily wakes up and has her breakfast," Aunt May instructed her daughter. Both girls stood up, Zoe heading out to fetch her mother's request and Tracy guiding Lily to a seat at the table. She then filled a bottle with orange juice and brought it to him. He felt anger bubbling up and started to say something, but remembered yesterday's events just in time. All that came out was a reluctant, thanks, as he accepted the bottle. As they finished breakfast, Zoe returned, holding up a small pink dress that looked like something a 3-year-old would wear. It was satin, with a lace overlay on the bodice, white lace on the sleeves, and a netting sewn in to keep the skirt flared. Lily stared at it with resignation, wondering what his cousins were planning for him now. Some of the things they had done hadn't been too terrible, he reasoned, like the look on Mr. Murphy's face when he realized he was ogling a boy, or the feel of the lingerie fabrics against his hairless body at the store last night. He had never been around girls' things before, but he'd been more than a little curious about them for some time. If his cousins had simply offered to let him try on some of their clothes on his own, they might have been successful. He just couldn't let them know that, especially now. After breakfast, he reluctantly let the girls help him into the pink dress, style his hair, and apply a little makeup. If they wanted to play doll baby with him, it was better than some alternatives he could imagine if the situation were reversed. But when his mother told the girls to take him to Mrs. Stewart's for hairstyling and manicures, panic set in. Going outside in this outfit felt like too much to bear. In shock and confusion, he started to cry again as the girls opened the door, the diaper clearly visible beneath the short skirt. Fortunately, no one was around at 8 on a Saturday, so he went unnoticed during the short walk next door. He began to gather a little composure again as Zoe knocked on the door. As they entered, little Billy exclaimed, "Mom, look at the sissy." "And a diaper, a sissy baby. Serves you right. Now Billy, you and your sister go play while I work with Lily. Just remember how you liked it when he put a dress and panties on you," his mother replied. Lily burst into tears, sobbing so hard he felt like he might collapse, his willpower draining from him. Now, we have to stop crying so I can work on you, or you'll ruin the makeup," Mrs. Stewart said. Having been a beautician before having children, she had all sorts of supplies laid out on the kitchen table. She led Lily over to a chair and had him sit down. "First, I think we'll start with a manicure while our sweet little girl calms down," she said. "Do either of you girls know how to do nails? Let me show you a few tricks on shaping and smoothing, and then you can do the other hand, Zoe," she instructed. Taking Lily's hand, she began filing his square-cut nails. Lily calmed down enough to watch as his rough, unkempt fingers were filed, buffed, and smoothed. They were now rounded almost to points, and the surfaces of the nails gleamed. The cuticles were trimmed back, and the rough skin around his fingers was buffed and creamed to a soft glow. Each nail was polished with a translucent pink enamel, making them appear longer and narrower. "Now, get that stool over there, and you girls can each do a foot while I work on this hair," Mrs. Stewart said as she tied a pink plastic apron around Lily's neck. "Remember, with the toes, make them much more rounded so they don't poke holes in her stockings." As she began to work on the wig, she trimmed any unevenness and rolled it in jumbo rollers along the bottom so that it fell just above Lily's shoulders. After lightly spraying the rollers with a setting solution and blow-drying the curled hair with a cool setting, she started to create tighter curls on the sides. She evened out the bangs, splitting them and feathering some back over the crown of Lily's head, with the rest cascading down in wispy curls to his eyebrows. Zoe, who was just finishing with his toes, looked up as Mrs. Stewart started to remove the rollers, creating a gentle, undertucked look across Lily's shoulders and a wavy effect on the sides. "Wow," she exclaimed. "What a difference! You look more like me than my sister does. Can you do that with my hair too? Can I see what you've done?" Lily asked. "Not yet. We still have to do the brows and touch up that pasty complexion a bit, and then you can see, sweetie," Mrs. Stewart replied. Mrs. Stewart carefully applied wax to Lily's eyebrows, thinning and arching them while ensuring they remained wide enough to still appear masculine if necessary. She added a light bronze stain to his upper cheekbones and jawline. "Oh www, Lily cried out as she removed the wax, taking a third of his eyebrow with it. "Grit your teeth for a moment while I do the other side, and then that part will be finished," Mrs. Stewart instructed. "Oh ww, he exclaimed again as she completed the other side. "Now, just a little trimming, and this part will be done. This won't hurt at all," she said. Using a blotter and solvent, she blended the stain into his complexion, giving his face and upper neck a sun-kissed look. By this point, Lily's curiosity was building. He could see the results of his hands and feet as they were finished, but aside from the sore eyebrows, he had no idea what Mrs. Stewart had done to his face and hair. He had been sitting there for over an hour, and his bottom was starting to ache. "Sit still for a couple more minutes while I finish my touch-ups, then you can see," she said. "Can one of you girls go grab the hand mirror from the bathroom so Lily can see how pretty she's become? If you're done crying, I can add a little color and do your eyes," she continued. "I'm way past crying now. If I have to be a girl for 6 weeks, I might as well look the part," Lily replied, his voice laced with resignation. Mrs. Stewart applied a dusty rose blush to his cheeks and used matching mascara on his eyelashes. For eyeliner and on his eyelids, she chose browns, bringing the color almost to his cheeks. After wiping off the bright pink lipstick the girls had applied earlier, she painted his lips with a dark mauve, shaping them to appear more sultry. When Zoe handed him the mirror, Lily blurted, "OHH, my God." The reflection staring back at him barely resembled himself. He thought he looked like a girl yesterday when his cousins had dressed him, but he could still recognize himself then. "I wouldn't even know it was me if I saw myself on the street," he exclaimed. Gone was the round-faced boy with a poor complexion, bushy eyebrows, and unremarkable features. In his place was a clear female figure with high cheekbones, large eyes, and sculpted features framed by gentle curls, with bangs sweeping across his forehead and shoulder-length sandy blonde hair tucked underneath the lace of the silly dress. If it weren't for the little girl lace on the collar, the reflection would have shown a beautiful woman. "See, I told you that you should have been a girl. I'm serious, not joking. I'm a little jealous of how pretty you really are," Zoe said. "Even our moms will be shocked when they see you now," Tracy added. "Can you do that for me?" Zoe asked. "If your mother approves, I don't see why not," Mrs. Stewart replied. "But I don't have time now, maybe later this afternoon while the kids are napping." "Thanks, Mrs. Stewart," Zoe said. "Let's take our beautiful cousin home and show her off." "You girls go now, I'll clean up here, but do call and let me know what your mother says so I can be ready for you," Mrs. Stewart said. "Yeah, thanks," Lily mumbled, barely audible. They returned home without further incident. Gertrude and May were waiting in the living room when they entered. "My God Almighty," they exclaimed in unison. "Mrs. Stewart promised a good job, but this is a miracle," May said, adding, "Who would have thought that the only boy born into the family in 3 generations would turn out to be the prettiest girl?" That sparked a hint of jealousy in Zoe, who had to reluctantly admit to herself that her mother was indeed correct. "Have you decided to be a good girl yet?" Gertrude asked Lily. He nodded in response. "Then we can dispense with the diaper, but remember, it will be here if you decide to act like a baby again," she said. "I've laid out an outfit on your bed for you. Be careful not to mess up your hair while you change. Can you dress yourself, or should your cousins help?" "I can do it myself, if that's okay," Lily replied. "Well, you'll have to hurry a bit since Vicki should be here shortly," Gertrude said as Lily started up the stairs. "I was really looking forward to helping her dress and keeping her in diapers," Tracy remarked. "While that would be fun for you, it's time to let Lily adjust a little on her own. The shock of going next door in that outfit this morning should be enough to keep her on the straight and narrow for a while." On his bed, Lily saw the frost-colored dress from the night before laid out, along with a pale green bra, panties, slip, mint corset, and pale stockings. Carefully, he removed the baby dress and diaper and began putting on the foundation garments. He slipped into the panties and bra without much trouble, but it took some effort to get the snug corset hooked. As he started to pull up the first stocking, he remembered that the panties were supposed to go over the garters. Instead of wrestling with the corset again, he simply pulled them through and hooked his stockings. He walked over to the mirror, still carrying his slip, to assess the results. Turning from side to side, he was pleased with what he saw. He had to admit that he looked much better as a girl than as a boy. After carefully putting on the slip, he looked at himself in the mirror again. He was admiring the feel of the silky fabric against the satin of his bra when Zoe peeked through the door. "I just came to see if you needed any help, sweetie." "I didn't mean to interrupt you playing with yourself," she said. "But it's clear you're really enjoying this, even if you won't admit it. If I told you something, could you keep it a secret?" Lily asked. "Don't worry, your secrets are safe with me." "I won't even mention how I found you when I came in," Zoe replied. "Well, if you had ever asked me to try on some of your underwear without forcing me, I probably would have just to see what it's like," Lily confessed. "I suspected that. I've seen the way you look at them when I'm home folding laundry, but you've always been so mean to me that I never dared mention it before," Zoe said. "I might even keep some of these panties for myself once this is all over," Lily added. "I'm sure you will, and the bras too," Zoe remarked with a knowing look. Lily felt unnerved by her expression and thought, what did she mean by that, but he didn't say anything. He quickly slipped on the dress, along with the belt and matching shoes. "My God, I am really beautiful," he thought to himself as he admired the finished look in the mirror. His feelings of self-appreciation faded as quickly as they had come when he heard a knock on the door downstairs. Vicki was here. Reluctantly, Lily made his way down the stairs, moving slowly. The girl he had been crushing on since she first showed up in high school was in his living room, and he was dressed like this. "She's going to hate me, she'll think I'm a fag or at least strange," he thought. His instinct was to run and hide under his bed. He didn't want her to see him like this. She had to know he liked her, and the little smiles she flashed when she scolded him for his pranks led him to believe she liked him too. Maybe he would have a chance to talk to her alone and explain what was happening, but then again, she probably already knew. It seemed like every girl in the neighborhood was aware of this before it even started. "Lily, come on down, dear. You have company." Gertrude called up the stairs. "Okay, here goes," he thought, forcing the biggest smile he could manage as he came through the stairwell door. There was Vicki, with her long red hair, huge green eyes, cute freckled face with alabaster skin, and the perfect body, a regular Irish angel, and she was seeing him in a dress. "Oh, you look absolutely lovely," Vicki exclaimed. "That dress and those bronzed cheeks are striking. I never thought you could be so beautiful." Hello, Vicki," he stammered, his eyes drawn to the generous amount of cleavage showing above her blouse. "Come now, be a lady," she said, noticing where his gaze was lingering. "Fiona asked me to stop by and help you coordinate your wardrobe, and I've brought a few things I thought you might appreciate," Vicki explained. She took him by the hand and led him into the dining room, placing the bag she was carrying on the table. Reaching into one, she pulled out a pair of light green earrings and a matching necklace. "When Fiona told me which dresses you bought, I knew I had to help with this old jewelry of mine. My ears are pierced, and I don't need these clip-ons anymore, so I thought I'd pass them on," she said. They were pretty and matched the dress, but earrings? Still, they would look lovely on the girl in the mirror upstairs. "Tea, anyone?" Gertrude asked, entering the room with a kettle and a tray. "No thanks, ma'am," Vicki replied. "First things first, and I've come to show Our Lady here how to match her clothing. But when I'm done, we'd love some, wouldn't we, Lily?" "Yeah," he said, albeit hesitantly. "Yes, ma'am, you meant, right, sweetie?" Vicki corrected him. "Yes," he replied. She took him by the hand and led him toward the stairs. In his room, Lily looked around and spotted the closet. Without a word, she walked over to it, opened the door, and began rearranging the clothes hanging inside. "Until you've developed a sense of color, I've organized things as much as possible, so the blouses will match the skirts behind them, and those that can be worn with more than one skirt are placed between the skirts they coordinate with," she explained when she was finished. "Who did your hair?" "It's absolutely beautiful and suits your face so well," she asked. "My neighbor," he replied, unconsciously patting the sides of his wig as he spoke. "And I see you like it," she responded. Tears began to well up in Lily's eyes. "I like you," he admitted. "But I didn't want you to see me like this. I can't imagine what you think of me now. Now, let's not cry, she said, taking his hand. I know more than you realize about how you feel right now. Let's sit on the bed and talk for a bit, and maybe I can help you. Such a sweet girl, he thought. I've always dreamed of being in bed with her, but not like this. You've seen yourself in the mirror, and you know you're a beautiful girl. In fact, I find you more attractive like this than before. You do? How can that be? You don't look nasty or threatening anymore. If it weren't for your past behavior and your tendency to say something cruel, I might have accepted one of your offers for a date earlier. I let you dance with me at school, despite yourself. I always thought you looked down on me and that you danced with me just to remind me of that. That's not true, but a girl can't reward the kind of behavior you've displayed. I was turning my nose up at your actions, not at you. Really? If you were out in public with me, could you act like a lady and not embarrass us both? Probably, though I'm not sure how to act like a lady while I'm out with you. If you promised to wear that pretty yellow dress I saw, I would ask your mother if it was all right for us to go to lunch and a movie, or maybe shopping after church tomorrow. Go out with you dressed like a girl? That's the only way I would consider it. But if it makes you feel any better, I'll be dressed as a girl too. Lily couldn't help but laugh at that. Okay, I promise. Good. You need some everyday bras and panties. The silk and satin ones are lovely, but they lose their specialness if you wear them every day. Just make sure you wear them tomorrow. I'll enjoy being out with you knowing what's under those skirts. Really? You're not bothered about being seen with a boy in a dress? I find it exciting. You're not the first boy in a dress I've gone out with, and besides, you look so beautiful and feminine that no one would suspect a thing unless you act foolishly. She stood and took his hand, pulling him off the bed, then gave him a light kiss on the cheek. Let's head down for tea and chat with your mother. When she heard them coming, Gertrude got up to return to the kitchen and put the kettle back on. They met as she came back through the dining room. Well, what do you think, Vicki? She asked. There's some hope for her yet, ma'am, Vicki replied. I understand she's starting at the academy on Monday. Yes, that's right, Gertrude answered. She should learn some manners there, or at least be close enough to them that some will rub off on her. Don't worry, Miss May will turn her into a proper lady, ma'am, Vicki replied as the kettle began to whistle. Lily stood by, gaping as both women headed for the kitchen. In just a moment, they returned, with Vicki carrying the tea service and napkins while Gertrude followed with the kettle and a tray of sandwiches. Vicki expertly arranged the cups, saucers, spoons, and plates for the three of them, while Gertrude brought over a tea bag and hot water. As they settled in, Vicki maneuvered so that Lily ended up sitting between her and Gertrude. Would our guest be so kind as to offer grace? Gertrude asked. Of course, Vicki replied. Dear Lord, we thank you for your blessings and for second chances. Please help Lily not to squander hers. Lily was totally confused. What was going on here? Upstairs, Vicki seemed excited about getting to know him better, but now she mirrored his mother's demeanor from the last day. Over tea, Vicki explained to Gertrude the offer she had made to take Lily out for lunch and to get essentials after church, mentioning they might stop for a movie if things went well. Gertrude agreed it would be good, saying, a girl as pretty as Lily should be out and about. As they finished and began tidying up, Gertrude explained they needed to hurry a bit because she promised to stop by the McMurtrys around 1. Boy, will that brat Stephen be surprised when he sees Lily out in the light of day, Gertrude said after explaining that he had taken a liking to Lily the night before. I bet he will, Vicki replied. Lily, could you please show me out? With that, Vicki took his hand and led him toward the door. As Lily opened it for her, Vicki pressed her lips against his in a sweet kiss and said, until tomorrow, sweet one. Lily watched as she walked down the sidewalk, moving in a way that had earned him the label of slut the night before. Since no one else was out on the street, she must have been showing off for him. She stopped as soon as she turned the corner at the end of the block. Boy, am I confused, he thought as he returned to the house. The only girl in the entire school who would have anything to do with me likes me better in a dress than as a boy, and everyone tells me how pretty I look this way. I can't get over how I look. If I can get Vicki to like me, maybe something good will come of this after all. He smiled at the memory of her parting kiss. Come down off your cloud and fix your lipstick, lass, or we'll be late, his mom called, breaking the spell. She handed Lily a purse, not large, but adequate, with a long shoulder strap. It was white, adorned with an applique in several pastel colors, including pale green. It would match most of the clothes now in his closet. Put the contents of your wallet into the purse, along with your keys, some lipstick, and the powder Mrs. Stewart gave you for daytime, Gertrude instructed. And hurry up, girl. He complied, finding a mirror to unsnap the applique and fix his lipstick, which had nearly melted under Vicky's warm kiss. He was ready in just a few minutes. Gertrude had changed from her house dress into a lovely green dress as well. From her shape, he guessed she must have put on a corset too. How could she manage to change, put that on, and do her makeup in less time than it took him to put on his own corset? Looking at her, he could see why his dad might have been attracted to her 20 years ago. As they left and started walking the 2.5 blocks to the McMurtrys' house, he noticed for the first time how differently she carried herself in public compared to at home. He realized she had always done this, he just hadn't noticed before. As they strolled down the block, several neighbors on their porches greeted them, along with a few "Who's the pretty lass?" comments from the men. She acknowledged them all with hellos and a brief introduction, "This is Lily, she'll be with me for a while," and continued on, checking her watch to signal that she wasn't being rude, she simply had somewhere to be soon. He also noticed that the wives didn't scowl at him like they usually did when he accompanied his mom in the neighborhood. Some of the younger men looked at him with a much different expression than they did his mother when he caught their eyes. At exactly 1 o'clock, Gertrude rang the doorbell. She gave Lily a quick once-over, smoothed the front of his dress, and smiled broadly for the first time in years, at least in his presence. Mrs. McMurtry welcomed them with a friendly greeting in her brogue, still tinged with memories from Belfast 2 decades ago. As she gestured toward the chairs across from the living room table, she said, "Do sit, ladies." "Tea or coffee, Mrs. Evans?" "Coffee for me, and a glass of juice for the lass, if that's all right," Gertrude replied. "Just cream for you, as I remember, and I have some grape juice prepared for Lily." "It is Lily, isn't it?" "Let me call the boys in from the yard," she said, scurrying toward the kitchen. It was only a few seconds before she returned with the beverages and a tray of shortbreads, followed by her 2 sons coming to the kitchen door. "You look well, Mrs. Evans, and your daughter is the picture of loveliness." "She must have met Mrs. Stewart, as she's the only one I know who can work that kind of magic." "She's done me up for special occasions before," Mrs. McMurtry commented. "Yes, Patty," Anna waved her wand, "and she's all the better for it," Gertrude replied. "Michael, Stephen, this is Lily, the girl you fancied at dinner last night," their mom introduced. "The nice one is Mike, and the hooligan is Steve." Steve, his eyes wide with surprise, simply stared at Lily as she sat in the sunlight streaming through the living room window. Mike at least managed to say hello. "See, he has no manners," Patty remarked, as Steve continued to gawk at the pretty girl his mom had invited over for him to meet. She was even more stunning in the light than she had been in the dimness of the restaurant. "Put your eyes back in your head, young man. You used to know Lily as Alan from down the street. Do you still want to get into her knickers?" He looked as though his mother had hit him with a board. "No way. I'm not a queer like Mikey is," was all he could mumble after a moment. "She's come to show you what you might look like in a couple of weeks if you don't change your ways, right, Lily?" she continued. "Yes, it's me," Lily replied. Mike half whispered to Steve, "You wanted to hook up with a boy. Who's the queer now? I can't wait to see you in a dress." "Shut up, you fag," Steve shot back, causing both women to stand up in surprise. As Gertrude glared at him with fiery eyes, his mother intervened. Michael, you can stay and sit with us. Stephen, go to your room now. I'll deal with you later, and we might go shopping a bit today. Steve turned and left quickly, a look of panic on his face, thinking, oh my God, she's serious, and look what happened to Alan, I didn't even recognize it was him. Patty turned to Lily. You poor sweet dear, I'm sorry for how my son acted toward you and your mother. I promise Stephanie will be much kinder to you. Michael grinned from ear to ear at the thought of Stephen in a dress. I have the perfect frock to start her off, Gertrude chimed in. It was Lily's first dress, a fancy pink party dress with 3 layers of petticoats. It's just a bit tight through the chest on Lily, but should fit your youngest quite well. That would be wonderful, Mrs. McMurtry replied. If you'll be home this afternoon, I'll send Michael by to pick it up, and I'll mention it to his father when he gets home from work. I still have some pink bloomers from my younger days that would go nicely with a dress like that, she added. The conversation turned to neighborhood gossip for another hour before Gertrude glanced at her watch and said, My, look how time has flown. Lily needs to prepare and practice for her outing tomorrow, and Patty will be here shortly, so I know you have things to tend to. Call me after church, we must get together more often, she added. Yes, we must, Patty agreed. She hugged Gertrude and lightly kissed her cheek, while Michael did the same with Lily. They exchanged further goodbyes and confirmed that Michael would stop by before dinner to retrieve the dress. The walk back home was largely uneventful, save for the wolf whistle Lily received from a couple of boys on the street that made him blush. The only other interruption was when he bent at the waist to pick up a dropped tomato, causing his stockings to peek out and garner comments from passers-by. They stopped at a few shops along the way to grab fresh bread, some stew meat, and a few vegetables. Lily noticed how differently the shopkeepers reacted to a pretty young girl compared to how they treated Alan. The scowls and tension were absent, replaced by smiles and compliments on his lovely appearance. He was getting better at carrying himself, and with the shorter steps necessitated by the heels, he kept pace with his mother instead of rushing ahead and yelling for her to hurry. Carrying the grocery bags to his chest instead of by his side felt different too. Whenever he tried to carry them like he used to, his purse would slide off his shoulder. He also enjoyed the sensation of the light summer breeze against his legs under the dress and the swish it created as it brushed against his stockings. Upon arriving home, he set the packages down on the counter and turned to leave the kitchen to his mother. The kitchen had always felt foreign to him, and the only thing he cared about in there was what his mother produced. A good daughter would help her mother with the groceries, Gertrude said. Better be good, he thought, knowing that his cousins and aunt would be back shortly and he'd pay for ignoring his mom's suggestion. He began unpacking the items, unsure of what he was doing. The vegetables need to be rinsed before you put them away, and they go in the crisper, not on the open shelf, honey, Gertrude observed as she watched him. Leave the stew meat out, and I'll show you how to brown and season it, she added as he picked it up and headed for the refrigerator. He put on the apron his mother handed him and watched as she worked with the meat. After it was browned and added to the stew pot with cubed potatoes to cook for a while, they both left the kitchen and settled in the living room. What else do you have planned for me today? Lily asked. Nothing much. You did well this afternoon, except at the vegetable market, and I think you learned from that. Zoe and Tracy will help you with your grace, and if you're wearing the yellow dress to church and out tomorrow, you'll need to learn how to conduct yourself in 4-inch heels, Gertrude replied. Mom, can I ask you a question or two without getting into more trouble? Lily said. As long as it's not hurtful or one of your smart aleck comments, of course, Gertrude replied. It's about Vicki, in a way. And? Why would a girl be interested in a boy wearing a dress if she wouldn't date him before? Many girls appreciate gentleness and sensitivity, and they often feel they're more likely to find those traits in someone who looks the part. Sometimes, appearance can overshadow knowledge, Gertrude explained. What do you mean, Mom? She paused for a moment, then said, when we were at the markets earlier, for example, the clerks and shopkeepers were probably aware it was you with me. Despite that, they were pleasant and smiling. There were none of the frowns and groans I usually hear when you accompany me shopping. You yourself were more polite and reserved than Alan ever was. Plus, your appearance made shopping a much more enjoyable experience than it usually is. I just acted that way so I wouldn't draw attention to the fact that I was wearing a dress out on the street, he replied. Okay, then that explains why you flounced and drew attention to your hair in the bread store. Flounced? Flounced. It's when a girl stands with one hip thrust out to highlight her shape and pats her hair with her hand raised from under her chin. That's flirting. If she keeps it up or repeats it when she knows someone is watching, she's flaunting her beauty, especially if she wiggles a bit afterward. That's just how I have to walk in these shoes if I hurry to catch up, and I was just trying to keep my hair from getting caught in these earrings. Sounds like an excuse to me, but we'll talk about this later. I just saw your cousin's heads bobbing by the window, and there will be a knock at the door any second now. Sure enough, his cousins and aunt arrived just as his mother finished speaking. He got up to let them in, but they opened the door before he could reach it. Zoe and Tracy burst in, bubbling over with excitement, while Aunt May tried to rein them in a bit. We want to hear all about Lily's day, Zoe said. How was Vicky's visit? Especially what went on at the McMurtrys. There was quite a buzz around that house as we passed it on the way here. Now, young ladies, where are your manners? May scolded. Neither of you even said hello. Gertrude said, Lily can tell you all about it while you teach her how to move gracefully in the higher heels she'll be wearing on her date tomorrow. A date? Her first day as a girl and she already has a date? Who's the lucky boy? The girls asked in unison. She'll explain everything while your mom and I tend to the stew, Gertrude said. Cupping her breasts, Zoe added, I go a month at a time between dates, and then all they care about is getting close to these. Zoe! May admonished. We're all girls here, Mom, we can talk, can't we? Zoe retorted. It isn't really a date, and it isn't with a boy. Yuck! Vicki and I are just going shopping after church, that's all, Lily clarified. Ooh! Zoe exclaimed knowingly. I hear she's a bit of a flirt and likes girls as well as boys. You'll fit right in since you're both. Mind your tongue, young lady, May replied. Victoria has always been a sweet girl in my experience, and such a beauty too. She was top of her class at the academy. A smart girl with her looks will go far. With that, the two ladies headed for the kitchen to prepare the meal while Zoe and Tracy went upstairs to gather shoes for Lily to practice with. Bring the pink party dress down with you, along with the undergarments, Gertrude called up the stairs. May shot her a puzzled look, and Gertrude gestured her into the kitchen. I think you'll see a new girl at Mass tomorrow, wearing that dress, Gertrude said. Stephanie? I wondered how long it would take for that to happen, May responded. Gertrude recounted the details of the afternoon's visit to her sister, who nodded knowingly as she listened, taking in every detail. May made a mental note to look into opening a slot at the Academy's summer finishing school for dear Stephanie if it indeed came to pass. St. Catherine's Academy for Young Ladies was considered the elite school in the diocese, and despite a divorce, the headmistress was its most influential woman. Many families had enrolled their sons in the school uniform to give them a leg up in the world, and many more wished they could afford the steep tuition. However, there was always room for a special case. Yes, Stephanie, Gertrude said. Young Michael will be by shortly to pick up the dress. I can't wait to see it on display tomorrow. I'll make sure Zoe monitors the section she is in. Zoe has it in for Stephen anyway after that locker room incident this spring, May said. I almost think you're enjoying this turn of events too much, Gertrude replied. What woman wouldn't want to have a hand in taming the two worst troublemakers in the neighborhood? May asked. While the women talked and cooked, the girls in the living room worked with Lily on how to walk and sit in higher heels, coaching him on feminizing his voice as well. They also probed him about Vicky's visit and the events of the afternoon. Lily focused more on balancing in the heels strapped to his feet and understanding the nuances of female body language. He didn't want a repeat of that afternoon's events happening in a mall full of teenage boys and young men. By the time they were called to supper, Lily had become much more graceful and had a better grasp on controlling his movements and gestures. It was hard for him to realize that every movement a girl made, and sometimes though she didn't, sent a message to the boys or girls around her, or both. It would take more than just dressing the part for him to navigate this world without mishap and remain a virgin. Just as they were about to head for the dining room, Michael knocked at the door. Zoe rushed to answer it, eager to be the first to ask questions. "Hi, Michael. What can we do for you?" she asked. "My mother sent me over to pick something up for her," he replied. "It wouldn't happen to be a pink party dress and petticoats, would it?" she teased. "Do you have a date you need this for?" Michael blushed deeply, his veins standing out, and he began stammering like a young boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. After a pregnant pause, he managed to say, "I guess I may be getting a new sister, or at least that's what my mother said when she and Dad dragged Stephen off to the mall." Meanwhile, Tracy was making a show of straightening, smoothing, and arranging the dress on the hanger, inspecting the undergarments in exaggerated detail to ensure Michael noticed her efforts. "Would you like to try it on to make sure it fits your brother?" she asked, still toying with the crinolines. Michael turned even redder, if that was possible. "I said it's for Stephen. I guess he's supposed to wear it to church tomorrow." "Yeah, sure," both girls chimed in unison. Michael hung his head and glanced over at Lily for help, but Lily, still in Allen mode, couldn't resist the temptation. "I'm sure it will fit either of you, and you both would look absolutely darling in it, so don't fight over it, okay?" Lily said. Michael rushed over and grabbed the garments as quickly as he could, tears beginning to well up in his eyes, and left as fast as possible, muttering a timid thanks over his shoulder at the room in general. "That was positively catty, Lily." "You're a quick learner," Zoe said. "Is there a problem?" Gertrude called from the dining room. "No ma'am," all three of them replied. "Michael was just overwhelmed by how pretty the dress will look on his sister," Zoe said, throwing Lily a wink that implied, "You owe me one." The five of them sat down to eat, with the evening's conversation revolving around the mischief of one Stephen/Stephanie McMurtry. Lily began to realize how passionately Zoe and Tracy felt about the things some boys did to girls, and he understood why they derived such enjoyment from the humiliations they put him through. Zoe recounted several instances when she and her friends had been sprayed by Stephen's garden hose while passing his house in their school outfits, recounting the embarrassment of their wet, thin cotton blouses becoming translucent and revealing their underwear for the 4-block walk home. "Wait until I see him in a bra. I'll pull it back 5 feet before I snap it," Zoe said. "And I want to be the first to unzip his skirt and see if he walks right out of it," Tracy added. Until this moment, Lily couldn't imagine what it would be like to walk home with wet hair and streaked makeup, or to feel vulnerable in clothing that fastened in the back. The idea of a soggy spitball landing in his cleavage, or being tripped with no pant legs to protect his knees, or falling on whatever he was carrying because it was in front of him began to sound like dreadful events rather than harmless pranks. The fact that none of the things they cited as the perils of the adolescent gender gap were foreign to him didn't escape his notice. He also learned that Zoe had it in for Michael for kissing a boy she had hoped would ask her to one of the school dances, and that she had reluctantly let him kiss her only 10 minutes prior. Aunt May concluded that a semester at St. Catherine's should be mandatory for every male in the diocese, appropriately dressed, of course. Lily winced, knowing that his semester was set to begin the following Monday. Finally, the uncomfortable meal came to an end, and Lily was told he was to help the other girls in the kitchen. They quickly put away the remnants of the meal and cleaned off the dining table. After a few adjustments for the novice, they got the dishes done and put away. Lily was ready to settle in as the Saturday night couch potato he had always been, but with his cousins here for the night, he had a nagging feeling that wouldn't be the case. "Lily, you were quite quiet at dinner. It's probably the only meal I've had where you didn't interrupt everyone to share your infinite wisdom," Aunt May remarked. "Well, what could I say? No one pulled down my skirt or hooked the back of my dress in my belt," he replied. "Stephen said he got the idea for the mousetrap on the pointer from you," Zoe chimed in. "I did get some very good news today. Victoria decided to accept the full scholarship to the state university since they're allowing her to do her freshman year at the branch here in town, and they'll let her start a week late because of her vacation trip to Denmark in August. She was the valedictorian of your class at St. Leo's as well, and her letter, which she said I should post as inspiration for my future students, credits her turnaround to the competence and compassion of the staff at St. Catherine's. She was on the verge of failing 5th grade before she came to us, a real mess with no social skills whatsoever, Aunt May shared.